Here you can see that I have two stencils. The black and white printout is to give me the idea of the shading and the contrast that is needed for the tattoo. The red printout would be guiding me on the line work that I would be laying on my tattoo. I have measured the size of the forearms. The total size of the tattoo would be 12 inches in length. I have cut the edges of the stencil for a better placement. As you can see here, the stencil is wide and it is getting warped at the wrist areas. One tip for a better fitting stencil is to cut slits on the sides of the stencil. Before applying the stencil, I am cleaning the area with a green soap. This disinfects the area and makes it safer to work. Now I am removing the excessive hair from this location with my disposable razor. This would help with a better stencil placement and clean pictures once the tattoo is complete. I'm wiping this area clean with a dry tissue now. I have to let this area dry before I place the stencil on the skin. Before transferring the stencil paper, I have to move the armrest away. This would let the skin relax in a natural position. I'm getting an idea of my stencil placement by just keeping the stencil on the skin first. As this design is huge, you can notice the areas near the wrist is getting folded. And at many times, this can be an issue while sticking the stencil. I will show you a tip on how to avoid this. It is very simple. All I am doing here is just slitting the lines through my stencil. I will show you a tip on how to avoid this. It is very simple. All I have to do is just slit lines through my stencil on all these areas where I can see the stencil getting folded. Be careful that in this process you do not cut the main subject of the stencil paper. In today's example, it would be the face and the hands. You can now see that my stencil is completely covering the forearms without any folds. I am marking the center point as per the center of his palms. All it would take is a vertical and a horizontal line running through the stencil paper. I'm using the Locks gel to apply my stencil for today, making sure that this is on a very thin layer on top of the surface. I am avoiding to put this gel on his existing butterfly tattoo, so this would enable the stencil to look clean on the skin. A simple way to place the stencil is to stick the center of the tattoo on the skin first, and then pressing the sides of the stencil gently to the skin. You can also use a tissue paper for this process. Watch carefully how I am sticking the spots where I have made the slits. Now I'm adding a bit of lox gel on top of the stencil. This would allow the stencil to stay on the skin for a longer duration. To make sure that my stencil is transferred on the skin, I am wiping off the excessive lox gel. I had let this develop on the skin for about a minute, and now I am removing the stencil from the sides very gently. So as you can see here, we have successfully printed the stencil on the skin. I have not applied the stencil on the existing tattoo area, as you can see. Now, I have to let this dry on the skin for a few minutes so that it stays throughout the tattoo session. The stencil printed by the thermal printer are very concentrated. So I would be using a fresh towel and dab it gently on top of the stencil. By doing this, I do not have to rub the skin too hard while working. Also, this process makes it easy to see the ink that is put under the skin. On the edges where I can see the existing tattoo, I would keep a gap of about 2 or 3 millimeters. To do this, I'm wiping the excessive stencil near the tattoo, and I would draw the outline with a marker. So I would keep the space of the outline so that my existing tattoo would look balanced with my today's tattoo. So these are my machines and the set of needles that I would be using for my today's work. I would be using a Cheyenne Thunder for my outlines and hard filling, whereas I'd be using the Cheyenne Spirit for the soft shading. My 5RL here would be for the minute details like the jewelry. The 7RL would be used for making bold lines. The 7R is here for power lines and for shading at smaller spots. The 9 Magnum is for soft shading at compact areas. And this is my 15 Magnum. This would be for covering the bigger areas.